everybody. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make delicious flaky country biscuits. This recipe is mixed by the cut-in mixing method, and with that it means that our fat has to be really cold, and we're going to get it into small pieces so that when the heat from the oven hits it, the water that is in our butter is gonna immediately be turned into steam, and that's what's gonna give us a little pocket inside our baked good. And that is what gives us our nice flaky texture. So we use this in biscuits, it's used in scones, a lot of times you'll see it used in pie dough as well, and that's what gives us that flaky texture. It's all those little tiny fat pockets. So the way that I am going to be manipulating my butter today so that I can get those nice little even fat pieces is I shredded my butter using a box grater. So I shredded that butter, I put it back in the freezer, and that was the first thing I did when I scaled out my ingredients. So I did my butter, throw that in the freezer, and then measure everything else out, and then your butter will be as cold as possible. That's gonna be really key for this recipe so that the butter stays solid and it doesn't start incorporating into your other ingredients. If that happens, we lose that flaky texture and it becomes something that's just a little more bread-like. So we also want to make sure that the rest of our ingredients are really cold. This recipe is also using milk, so keep that in the refrigerator after you measure it out until right before you need it, so you know that it's as cold as possible. So let's get started. I'm gonna start by sifting my dry ingredients directly into my bowl. So I have my all-purpose flour, kosher salt, a little bit of granulated sugar. This is just enough that it's gonna give us a tender biscuit. It's not so much that it's gonna give us a sweet tasting biscuit. This is still gonna be a really nice neutral flavor, so it can go equally well with a sweet jam, or it can go with alongside a savory dish. Now I'm gonna add my fat in. And now I'm just going to gently toss that cold butter in my dry ingredients. Make sure everything is equally combined and I don't have any pockets of my baking powder or kosher salt or sugar. And I'll make sure everything is evenly mixed before I add my wet ingredients. Okay, so now I have my cold milk and I'm gonna add this in, and you can gently, I like to mix this with my hands so I can kind of feel what's happening with the dough. I'll just add this in gradually. I really like this recipe because it's pretty quick to make and you can have nice fresh biscuits pretty much anytime you want. So you can see that the mixture still looks pretty dry, but I can feel this and it feels nice and moist. And when I turn this out on the table and start kneading this, all of my moisture is going to come together. So I'm going to go ahead and turn out my ingredients. Now I'm gonna start kneading these together. So I'm just pulling these into the center and then gently pushing away with the heel of my hand to start kneading this together. And as I'm kneading, so I'm gonna pull this up and then push forward with my palm and then I rotate it 90 degrees so that I'm making sure that I'm incorporating these ingredients evenly, and then occasionally come and pick back up any of those dries that you have on the counter. And now we have a nice dough. Okay, so now it's time to roll out. Now that we're ready to roll out, I'm gonna use just a little bit of bench flour, just enough so that my dough doesn't stick. I don't wanna change the recipe. So I have that on and it's moving, it's not sticking to the counter. I'm gonna do just a little sprinkle on top, and then I'm gonna give this a head start and give this a little press down. So our thickness that we want to roll to is about 1/2 inch thick. So we really don't have that far to go. Just a little bit more on there. So when you're rolling, we want to roll just on the middle of our dough. You don't want to come on this front or the back edge. The reason being, if I roll all the way down, it'll continue to thin, and then all of my edges will end up being much thinner than the middle of the dough. And we want to make sure that all of our dough is the same thickness. So I'm going to make a few passes in one direction and then rotate it 90 degrees. And you can see I have a little bit of higher edges right here. But now when I roll this way, it's going to pick that up and give us a nice even thickness. And every time I move it, I'm making sure that my dough is moving, not sticking to the counter. If it's starting to stick, then you just add a little bit more flour. Okay, so I'm right at about 1/2 inch thick. So now I'm ready to cut. So you can use round cutters like these. This is a 2.5 inch diameter. You can go bigger or smaller depending on what your needs are. You can also use a metal food can, like from a canned good, and remove the tops and the bottoms, and then you can use that to punch out. So when we're cutting, I can kind of just touch this in some flour to make sure it doesn't stick. You want to make sure that we press straight down, then we'll twist. You don't want to do a twisting motion as you come down, because that will start to pinch all of your layers together. We're also going to cut as close together as possible so that we have the least amount of waste from this. We can re-roll this dough one more time, but you'll notice that on the second roll of your biscuits, when they come out of the oven, they're not quite the same as the first roll out. When you're re-rolling the scraps, just knead them back together. You want to make sure that you're not manipulating the dough too much. If you knead it too far, your biscuits will start to be tough. Then you just want to roll these back to that 1/2 inch thickness and cut out rounds as you did the first time. So these rest of these scraps, these are just trash. You can always throw them on your baking sheet and just have them as something that you can snack on, and double check your biscuits and make sure that they're tasting good before you give them to anybody. These are gonna go in my preheated oven, 425 degrees, until I can see a nice golden brown, just about 10 to 12 minutes, depending on your oven. My biscuits just came out of the oven, and you can see they have these beautiful layers in them from that butter using the cut-in method. If you want your biscuits to be just a little bit more buttery, right when they come out of the oven, you can use some melted butter and just brush the tops of those. This is just gonna give you just a little extra punch of butter, and give you some really, really tasty biscuits. This is a great recipe too that you can manipulate. You can add in shredded cheese or fresh chopped herbs into those dry ingredients and have endless possibilities for flavors. So that is biscuits. I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know how yours turn out, and I'll see you guys next time.